You have to do this, Emma. He's your brother. My mother's voice was cold, her eyes harder than I'd ever seen them. I sat in their pristine living room, clutching the medical consent forms they thrust into my hands moments earlier. My brother Michael's kidney failure wasn't a surprise. He'd been living recklessly for years, drinking heavily despite warnings from his doctors. I don't have to do anything, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Michael made his choices. Why should I risk my life for someone who's never cared about mine? My father slammed his hand on the coffee table, making me jump. Because we're family, he roared. Because after everything we've given you, you owe us this much. Everything they'd given me? I almost laughed. For 28 years, I'd watched them shower Michael with endless love, support, and money, while I worked 3 jobs to put myself through nursing school. Every achievement of mine was dismissed, every milestone overshadowed by whatever minor accomplishment Michael had managed that week. We'll cut you off completely, my mother threatened, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her designer handbag. No inheritance, no family connection, nothing. Is that what you want? I looked around at the family photos covering the walls. In every single one, Michael stood front and center, while I was relegated to the edges, an afterthought in my own family's narrative. Even now, with his health failing due to his own poor choices, they were choosing him over my well-being. The surgery is risky, I said, my medical training kicking in. There are no guarantees it'll even work, especially given his lifestyle. He's changed, my mother insisted. He's promised to stop drinking. He's ready to turn his life around, but he needs this chance. You can't be so selfish, Emma. Selfish. That word had been weaponized against me my entire life. I was selfish for wanting new school supplies when Michael needed sports equipment. Selfish for applying to medical school when Michael needed tuition for his 3rd attempt at community college. Selfish for not giving him money when he gambled away his trust fund. Fine, I said finally, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. I'll do it. But I have conditions. My father's face darkened. You're in no position to make demands. Actually, I am. I'm the only match you found after testing the entire family. So you'll listen to what I have to say. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded curtly. I want to see all of Michael's medical records before the surgery. Every test, every scan, everything. And I want to choose the surgical team. That's ridiculous, my father started, but my mother touched his arm. Fine, she said. Whatever you need, just save your brother. I signed the initial consent forms, my hand trembling slightly. As a nurse, I knew exactly what I was agreeing to. The risks, the recovery time, the potential complications. But something felt off about the whole situation. Michael hadn't even bothered to ask me himself, sending our parents to do his dirty work as usual. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital where I worked, ready to review Michael's files before meeting with the surgical team. My colleague, Dr. Sarah Martinez, gave me an odd look when I requested access. Your brother's files? She asked, frowning. But I thought, didn't you see them last month? I shook my head, confused. No, I just agreed to the donation yesterday. Sarah's face went pale. Emma, wait here, she said, hurrying to her office. She returned with a thick manila folder, her expression grave. You need to see this, she said, placing the folder in front of me. And you need to know that what your family is doing, it's not just unethical. It's criminal. My hands shook as I opened the folder, and suddenly everything I thought I knew about my family, about Michael's condition, about the sacrifice I was being forced to make, shattered into a million pieces. The truth staring back at me from those medical records would change everything forever. The medical records in front of me told a story so twisted, I had to read them 3 times to believe what I was seeing. Michael didn't have kidney failure, at least not the kind my parents had claimed. The damage to his kidneys wasn't from drinking or his reckless lifestyle. It was from a rare genetic condition, one that had been diagnosed when he was just 16. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. They knew, I whispered, flipping through page after page of documented visits, treatments, and consultations. They've known for 12 years. Sarah nodded grimly. There's more. Look at the genetic testing results. My hands trembled as I turned to the lab reports. The condition was hereditary, passed down through both parents. According to the genetic counseling notes, any biological sibling would have a 25% chance of carrying the same mutation. But I was never tested, I said, my voice rising. They never told me I could be at risk. That's because they did test you, Emma. When you were 16, the same time they tested Michael. I stared at her, uncomprehending. Then I found it, my own genetic test results buried in Michael's file. I was not only free of the condition, I was a perfect match for organ donation. The reality hit me like a physical blow. They'd known since I was a teenager that I could be a donor for Michael. They'd been planning this for years, watching me work my way through nursing school, waiting until I was established enough in my career to survive the surgery and recovery. "There's a note here from Dr. Harrison," Sarah said quietly, pointing to a recent entry. "He refused to perform the surgery when he realized you hadn't been informed of your previous testing. That's why they're pushing so hard for it now. They're running out of doctors willing to do it." I felt sick. Every sacrifice I'd made, every time they'd chosen Michael over me. It wasn't just favoritism. They'd been protecting their investment, their insurance policy for Michael's future. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Did you schedule the pre-op appointment yet? We need to move quickly." Another buzz. "Michael's getting worse. Don't you care about your brother at all?" The manipulation that had worked on me for years suddenly felt transparent and cruel. I thought about all the times they'd guilted me about money, about time, about attention, all while knowing they were grooming me for this moment. "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked, her hand on my shoulder. I stood up, gathering the records with shaking hands. "First, I'm making copies of everything. Then I'm going to have a conversation with my family that's long overdue." I drove to my parents' house, the copied records sitting heavy in my bag. Through the front window, I could see Michael lounging on the couch, playing video games, hardly the picture of someone in desperate need of an organ transplant. My mother opened the door before I could knock. "Finally, we need to discuss the surgery schedule." "No," I cut her off, walking past her into the living room. "We need to discuss these." I pulled out the medical records, watching as the color drained from her face. "Where did you get those?" my father demanded, standing up from his armchair. "Does it matter? What matters is that I know everything. The genetic testing, the planning, all of it. You've been preparing for this since I was 16. Michael paused his game, looking confused. "What's she talking about?" "They never told you either, did they?" I turned to my brother. "They tested both of us as teenagers. They've known for 12 years that you'd eventually need a transplant and that I could be your donor. They've been planning this my entire adult life." The silence in the room was deafening. Michael's face went through a range of emotions: confusion, shock, anger. "Is this true?" he asked our parents. "You knew all this time?" "We were protecting you," our mother said desperately. "Both of you. We didn't want you to live in fear." Michael and Emma. Emma needed to focus on her studies, on becoming successful enough to handle the surgery. "Successful enough to be useful, you mean," I corrected her. "That's all I've ever been to you. A spare parts warehouse for your precious son." "Now listen here," my father started, but I held up my hand. "No, you listen. The surgery isn't happening. Not now, not ever. I've already reported this to the medical board. No ethical doctor will touch this case once they know the full story." My mother burst into tears, the manipulative sobs I'd fallen for so many times before. But this time, they held no power over me. "You can't do this," she wailed. "He's your brother." "Yes, he is," I agreed, turning to Michael. "And if you want to have any kind of relationship with me going forward, it starts with the truth. All of it." I walked out of that house feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone started buzzing immediately. Texts, calls, voicemails, all demanding I come back, threatening consequences, begging for understanding. I deleted them all. This wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot, but for the first time in my life, I was writing my own chapters. The fallout was nuclear. Within days, my parents' carefully constructed facade began to crumble. The medical board launched an investigation, focusing on how they had concealed my previous testing and manipulated medical information. Several doctors who had refused to perform the surgery came forward, sharing documentation of my parents' attempts to pressure them into proceeding without my informed consent. What surprised me most was Michael's reaction. After the initial shock wore off, he showed up at my apartment one rainy evening, looking more sober and serious than I'd ever seen him. "I didn't know," he said, standing awkwardly in my doorway, "about any of it. I swear, Emma." I believed him. Michael had always been spoiled and entitled, but he wasn't cruel, just deeply damaged by our parents' toxic favoritism. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "We need to talk." Over coffee, Michael revealed his own struggles with our parents' manipulation. They never told me how serious the condition was, he admitted. Just kept saying they had it handled, that I shouldn't worry. Every time I tried to take responsibility for my health, they shut it down. They infantilized you while parentifying me, I observed. Classic narcissistic family dynamics. The investigation uncovered more than just medical ethical violations. Financial records showed our parents had set up a secret trust in my name when I was 16, not for my benefit, but to cover future medical expenses for Michael. They'd been siphonning money from my inheritance, preparing for the inevitability of the transplant. Dr. Harrison, the physician who had refused to perform the surgery, became my strongest ally. He helped me file a formal complaint and connected me with other medical professionals who had encountered similar situations. What they did wasn't just unethical, he explained during a meeting with the medical board. It was a calculated, long-term plan to deny their daughter medical autonomy while using her as a living organ bank. My parents' response was predictable. They launched a smear campaign within our extended family, painting me as the ungrateful daughter who would let her brother die. But their efforts backfired when Michael, for the first time in his life, stood up to them. "Emma's not the problem," he announced during a family gathering they'd orchestrated to pressure me. "You are. You've been playing God with both our lives, and I'm done." That was the moment everything truly changed. Michael moved out of our parents' house and into a small apartment. He started attending therapy, confronting not just his medical condition but the psychological damage our parents had inflicted. I received a call from our Aunt Catherine, our father's sister, a month after the truth came out. "I should have seen it," she said, her voice heavy with regret. "The way they treated you, I always knew it was wrong, but I never imagined the extent of their manipulation." The medical board's investigation concluded with severe repercussions for several healthcare providers who had enabled our parents' scheme. My parents faced legal consequences for their actions, including financial fraud related to the secret trust. But the real healing began when Michael and I started rebuilding our relationship without our parents' toxic influence. We found a specialist who helped us understand his condition and develop a proper treatment plan, one that didn't involve sacrificing my health. "I never wanted your kidney," he told me one day as we left a doctor's appointment. "I just wanted a sister." 6 months after the confrontation, I received a letter from my mother. It was full of the same manipulative language, the same guilt trips, but now I could see through every word. "Your brother's condition is worsening," she wrote. "How will you live with yourself if something happens to him?" I showed the letter to my therapist, who helped me draft a response. "Michael's condition is being properly managed by competent medical professionals. He's taking responsibility for his health, something you never allowed him to do. If you want any relationship with either of your children, you need to do the same." They never replied. Today, Michael is doing well on his medication regimen. He's sober, employed, and building a life independent of our parents' control. We have dinner together every Sunday, sharing stories and support, healing from decades of manipulation. As for me, I've become an advocate for organ donor rights, working with medical ethics boards to prevent similar situations. The experience changed me profoundly, but not in the way my parents intended. Instead of breaking me, it made me stronger. Sometimes healing means cutting away the diseased parts of your life, even when those parts are family. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. And sometimes the family you rebuild from the ashes is stronger than the one that tried to burn you.